Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. I hope you all did something fun in July from a socially responsible distance. I know you missed the show, but never fear, we have an interesting topic for the month. Giving. Yes, I said giving. A lot of conversation in the financial world focus on how to make more, invest more, save more. Giving is often overlooked, but it's a huge piece of the pie. Winston Churchill has a famous quote I love. We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. And I think it's such an important topic to talk about so that we can continue to operate with a mindset of abundance. So we are talking about giving from a few different angles this month. We're going to tackle charitable giving, your attitude and your mindset around giving, how giving can help you win at business, impact giving, which you may or may not have heard of, but never fear, tune in and you'll find out soon. And then tithing. That's something that's super popular, often talked about, and we want to think about what tithing looks like, especially from a financially responsible place. We've got some great guests with interesting perspectives, so tune in and don't miss any of the episodes in August. Now, today, I'm excited to have professional track and field athlete, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, Steven Benedict, here to share his money memoir with us. While Stevie has encountered pretty much every reason not to race, from abandonment to abuse to untimely deaths, before the age of 28, he was confronted with more obstacles than the majority of people face in a lifetime. Despite the hardships, Steven applied what he learned on the track to remain focused on the finish line. His rules for running the race translate to almost every industry, person, and circumstance, and his story is a reminder to all who hear it that so long as you have breath in your lungs, your race can still be won. Steven is also the founder of Fostering Success, a nonprofit organization that pairs professional athletes with foster kids, and is a powerful motivational speaker and an author. Today, Stevie is going to share more about his personal experience and how he's using it to give back to others. Let's listen as he shares his money memoir with us. Steven, I'm so excited to talk to you today. The theme this month is giving. And I thought, what better person to have on to talk about giving, because there's so many different types of giving. So we're going to talk about giving from a charitable aspect a little bit later in the show. But let's start by introducing the audience to you and learning a little bit about you. So where are you from? Tell us a little bit about your upbringing, and let's start from there.
I appreciate you guys having me. I was looking forward to this all week, but my name's Steven Benedict. I'm a professional track and field athlete, but my upbringing background, I guess you can say a roller coaster of a ride. So started in foster care, moved into adoption family, and then wound up losing both of those adopted parents. So it's been a long journey, but there's been a lot of life lessons learned earlier in my years, which have really benefited me now to be able to give back and to be able to be a voice for others.
At what age did you leave from living with your parents to going into foster care?
So I went into foster care twice. I went into foster care before my brother was born. So I have a younger brother. We're 2.5 years apart. I went into foster care at 4 months due to neglect and abuse and an unstable living situation. And then I was put back into my mother's hands not too long after that. And my brother was born. And at the ages of 4 and 2, we were put back into foster care for about another 5 years.
And never back into the household of your parents?
Yeah, never back into the household of my birth parents. I never had a relationship with my father, didn't even know my father. I don't have a picture of my father. All I do have is his social security number. So that's kind of a big question mark for me.
Mm.
And my mother, I haven't spoken to her since I was 10 years old. And the last time I went to go reach out to her to really resolve some things and get some questions answered, I had found out that she'd passed away. So,
Man, sorry to hear that.
yeah, a lot of closed doors on that area. So there was a lot of cleanup having to do, a lot of having to deal with situations that kind of popped up in my later years. That it's a constant work in progress, just it is for everybody.
Yeah, I would imagine so. So much of what we experience in our childhood manifests itself in different ways during our adult years. And a lot of us are having to figure out how to undo some things that we learned or saw. And in particular, even with money emotions. So if you weren't in the household with your parents, you didn't learn money lessons from them. Were there money lessons that you were learning via foster care or kind of bouncing around? Or what kind of experiences did you have or see? Or can you remember things that you were thinking about money in the midst of all the craziness?
Yeah, money was really not on the radar at that point. The more important things, which I guess to learn this at an early age was very beneficial and is so, I think, overlooked at, is I learned the essentials were the most important. So having a roof over our head, having a warm bed to sleep in, and having a hot meal to eat at night. Those were the most important things for us. If we had those things and we were set, we were taken care of, and that was our financial freedom at that point.
Right.
Yeah. There was really not a lot of talking of money, and it was the stability aspect was kind of like all over the place. We were just trying to find out where we fit.
Yeah, I think so often we take for granted the idea that money is going to cure things or money's going to buy happiness. And the idea that there are many people nationwide right now that are just trying to make ends meet. And it's not even so much about the money, it's more about the roof. Like you said, it does cost money for someone to get that roof over your head, but you're not even actually thinking about dollars and cents in your pocket. You're just thinking, is some resource coming to me in the form of food and shelter? Not so much the actual monetary. There's no thinking about a retirement fund or saving, or it's just survival of the fittest.
Right, without a doubt. And especially nowadays, I think, with everything that's going on in the pandemic and everybody's kind of scrambling and just really trying to, if you have a family, trying to protect and provide for them and just to sustain this feeling of, what do I do next?
Yeah. So take us through chronologically. We've gone through being removed from your parents' house, going into foster care, coming back, going back into foster care. Then you said you had some adoptive parents. Did that create a little bit more stability in your life?
Yes, without a doubt. That period was our transition period, and it was really going from a place for me as the older brother having to be very aware and protect and provide for my brother to really kind of being able to handle and hand over those reins to my adopted parents, and just to have that trust aspect and the acceptance that they had given us at that point was just so overwhelming for us. The whole family just really accepted us as their own. And that transition was great. Then there was a lot more of a broader picture of what life looked at, with a financial stability behind us and roof over our head and that whole aspect. My mother was a second grade teacher, and she was probably the most bold person I've ever met on and off like the family scene. She had so much impact in so many lives as far as kids and our schooling, and then also our lives. She ruled with an iron fist in our lives. She was basically involved in everything across the board. If we were in sports, she was either a coach or she pushed to the point where she was the president of our little league. And for things like, we were involved in music and education. Then we had our father's side, who was really the pure joy of life. He was ex-military. He fought in Vietnam, but then he also went to work for Merrill Lynch on the New York Stock Exchange. So there was a lot of finances there and a lot of number crunching there, which was never really my strong suit. I'm not a big math guy. I'm more of on the other spectrum of the creative aspect of things, art, graphic design, marketing, and branding and all that stuff, which there's budgets and stuff involved in that a lot.
Yeah, I think we take for granted how much numbers are involved in everybody's life, no matter whether you are a numbers person or not. We've got to have some sort of basic financial literacy in order to be able to pursue our creative desires and passions and things like that as well. One thing you mentioned, though, your mom was a teacher and your dad was military. Then he switched over to, like you said, finance world. And I know from my perspective, a lot of people assume because I'm a financial advisor that I'm just filthy rich rolling in a dough. But generally, it's kind of a middle class job in the sense of earning wise. So sounds like these are two pretty normal people. And I think one of the perceptions with adoptive parents is that only rich people adopt kids and take on the responsibility, the financial responsibility of kids. But it doesn't sound like you guys were rich growing up, but you were, like you said, well cared for, and there were additional children in the household as well.
Yeah, there was just me and my brother. They didn't have children before us. So the financial picture and everything, yes, it wasn't particularly like outlandish or anything, but well taken care of. We can put it in that perspective. And they really gave us a second chance at life and introduced us to things like family vacations and just being experienced to go places every summer. We went to different destinations. And I think that gave us more of an exposure to things, and also how my father really and my mother, they were really a joint team in what they did. And they knew their financial picture and they knew what they were doing, and they knew that they were bringing in two children from a very unstable background. So to have that switch to kind of be the example for us later on down the road to really open up those doors to see, hey, this is how you provide, this is how you protect, and this is how you serve your family. And that gave us a broader picture of being more well-rounded men.
I love that they were providing you with, like you said, those key life skills, and you were picking them up despite all the things that had happened. Is there one thing that sticks out from your childhood that they taught you?
There were so many things that they have such a turning point for us. I've always been a very aware person, and I've had to be. I grew up. That was probably one of my strongest skill sets that I took on at a very young age, and that had to do with just protection and everything. And so very aware of my surroundings, very aware of what my mother was doing, very aware of what my father was doing, their tonality, their approach to different situations. And not every financial situation was really a benefit. I remember there was one situation that my father had his financial advisor, and his financial advisor wound up getting caught for embezzlement.
Oh, no.
Lost a bunch of accounts, my father's account being one of them. They lost a bunch of money in that sense. Luckily, they had allocated their funds in several different areas and diversified it very well. But it was a big chunk that I remember that they took a hit on when we were in high school, and it hurt for a bit, and they scrambled. But they were both very diligent, especially my mother. My mother was very diligent in what she did and never took anything laying down. So they bounced back from it pretty well. But I remember that experience, and I remember having a high tension in the house.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times people go through things and they feel like they're going through those things alone. But it's kind of the average story in America that somebody's going to come up against some sort of financial thing that has the potential to be catastrophic. And it will create some sort of wave in your life. And it doesn't matter if you're a $30,000 earner or a $300,000 earner. Events in your life are going to come up, and then they're going to have some tie to money. And so to be ready to weather that storm and have good goals and values in place during that time, I think is a really key thing. So it sounds like they weathered it pretty well. You noticed it in the household. You could feel that tension, but you guys made it through that.
Yeah, we definitely did. And they definitely took care of the sustainability in the house. And I never really felt a sense of lack. Did we feel a sense of kind of cutting back and tightening up some corners and loose ends? Yes. I think that's part of growth for everyone. And I think that's really what sets you apart as far as being financially smart and just financially throwing it all away and doing whatever you want with it and not caring and not being aware and be like, hey, it'll take care of itself.
Right. What was your first job?
My first job was a camp counselor.
Ah.
Yeah, I was a camp counselor at the camp that I went to. And it was funny for me to be at that age and to jump into a position like that, coming from my background, to having to deal with other kids, knowing that at that point I was still working through a bunch of my own emotions, but I was always very athletically inclined, just as you are. And it's always been a piece of me that has always pulled me to really impact our youth and to give them those outlets and to open up those doors. And I think that was my very first experience to do that.
That is so awesome. So you got to give back even when you maybe felt like you maybe weren't in a position to give back, but it probably really helped you to continue to grow and reach your full potential by showing like that there is something you have to give, even when you don't feel like you have something to give.
Yeah, without a doubt. But, I think at that age, I really wasn't thinking of that picture. I was thinking about, hey, there's a paycheck.
Simple things in life. Exactly. You get to look back on it and see how fruitful it was. But in the moment, it's like, this is a job.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So what happened after high school then? Tell us a little bit about young adult years and how things kind of played out for you.
Yeah, so my senior year in high school, I had a bunch of scholarships on hand and getting ready to go to college and figure out what school I wanted to go through based on track. And my senior year, I got that so famous senioritis and started to slack off on my grades. And my mother was not too happy about that. But then I remember that the exact day of our league championships, which I was favored to win the 4, I decided to play basketball and came down and rolled my ankle. I was done and I couldn't run, lost a bunch of scholarships that year and had to go to junior college and wasn't going to run anymore. But then I had a coach at that junior college that had seen me run in high school and approached me my freshman year at that junior college. He was ex-Navy SEAL and he was really on point and he just really took me under his wing and he was just like, I know who you are. I've seen you run. Why don't you come out for the team and we'll see what we can do. And after that point, he just kind of like groomed me back and put me back on the right course and had a good relationship with my father. At that point, he wanted me to take the Navy SEALs test. So he wanted me to go that route. And I had actually thought about it, but I didn't go through with it. And I just didn't feel like it was the right route, although it was very enticing at that time. So after my first year, I wound up getting a scholarship back. I went to Rhode Island University, D1 school there, studying graphic design and marketing and pushed my way through that. But my second year there, I had to come back down and leave Rhode Island. My mother had gotten sick and she was diagnosed with bone marrow cancer. And I moved back down closer to home and wound up going to a state school there in Montclair State, which I ultimately graduated from. But she wound up losing her battle within a year, which was very tough to watch such a bold woman go from this image of what we pictured her as and what we saw her as on a consistent basis to really debilitating to nothing. The biggest thing for me in that whole experience, there was 2 things in that whole experience is watching one, the last things my mother said, and this just kind of consistently came across her character and showed her character shining through it, even on the last days, was 2 days before she passed, she had set up and she had me and my brother in the room. And the last thing she said to us was, everything's going to be okay.
Oh my goodness. Even on her deathbed, she's worried about you all and telling you everything's going to be okay.
Exactly. That really stood out. And that was one of staple marks for me to really just keep that in hindsight of everything, know who she was.
Also a really still young time to lose your parents. It sounds like you were a sophomore in college. So you hadn't spent your whole childhood with your adoptive family. And now here you are, kind of just barely tapping on the door of adulthood and you're losing the parents that did create that stability for you.
Yeah, it was very tough. And, and we look back at it and it's just like, to be honest, through our whole couple of decades in which we've lived so far, we've only had a stable family and a stable household of parents for about 10 years. So it's a very short time. So there's a lot of life lessons and a lot of growing up very fast.
I can only imagine. Yeah. Unbelievable. But you seem to turn things around and not even turn them around so much. It sounds like you were, like I said, on a journey all the time towards something amazing and you're continuing to pursue something amazing. So tell us a little bit about where you are now, what life looks like, and we'll talk a little bit about giving.
Yeah. So right now, I'm still an athlete. I'm still competing. Probably have about 2 years left. And then depending on, how my body holds up, which you know very well about.
So are you competing full time?
Yeah, I'm competing full time. I have so much on the plate right now. I think smart athletes, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, for yourself and everything. We have to be, especially in our sport, we have to be very diverse and very open, and you have to be a hustler in our sport because the contracts are just not there. And I like to look at myself very multifaceted. I do marketing stuff for brands and private brands, brand strategy, directing for other brands, and helping them really build out their voices and know who they are and their core values. Now I also have my personal brands that I work with and my team, PR agents and things like that, to really build up that aspect of things. And then there's nonprofit aspects and things. So there's a lot on the table, and I have a book coming out. So really trying to keep myself busy, but also having to have multiple strands of different income, which is very important in nowadays.
Gotcha. So you said 1 or 2 years left competing as a professional athlete. So I would assume then you're trying to prepare for the 2021 games, and then maybe the year after that, take a victory tour and move on if things go as planned?
That's the plan right now. God knows if these games are going to even happen with everything that's going on. But yeah, that's the plan. And then try to transition into another sport maybe. I just always feel like I'll always be an athlete and I'll always need to train for something.
Yeah.
And it's in my DNA. So I have a couple of ideas that I'm thinking about transitioning into. But yeah, right now it's just full time, and it's just really keeping a good head on my shoulder and just trying to make an impact as much as I can right now with whatever comes across my board.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. So this month's theme is giving. And I think it's really cool that not only have you been the recipient of so much giving, but that you are a big giver yourself. So tell us what led you to create Fostering Success.
Well, first and foremost, I think it's my personal experience. And one thing that I really hone in on whenever I do anything, whether I'm working with a brand or developing a brand, is that I make sure that I can represent it organically and authentically, and also that it is in line with my core values and I'm not running off on tangents, trying to just make up something. And I think that's really important. When I came back from Italy competing about 2 years ago, I sat down with a manager and I said, I wanted to do something that was bigger than I was, not about me, but definitely had pieces of who I was in it. And that's how Fostering Success was born. I've been to so many charity dinners. I'm sure you have as well. And I think that one of the biggest pieces that really kind of takes away from the essence of the event and what the cause is that people know that they're going to be asked for money at some point throughout that dinner, and that puts a damper on it. There's people of wealth there that are going to be throwing out money because they have expendable money, expendable cash. And then there's other people that are there for the cause. They want to support, but they can't support as much as some other people. So I've really looked at that piece and I took that piece out. So what Fostering Success is a multi-dimensional nonprofit that is really, I'd like to say, really changed the game of charities. And what I mean by that is that first and foremost, there's a tangible piece. So there's a book called Fostering Success, and it's a documentary book where I bring 15 female athletes, 15 male athletes together, and I pair them off with a foster kid, which I've partnered with the Children's Bureau of LA, who's the biggest foster agency in the nation. And I set them up with an athlete. We shoot them together and document their day together. There'll be roughly about 30 pages through the book. And the book is all about the essence of the pictures, the essence of the connection in which these athletes and also these foster kids come together, giving them that outlet. 2 pieces of who I am, my foster kid side and then the elite athlete side of them. And I married them together so that when people do donate money, when they do buy this book, they know that they're buying into something that's impacting tangible lives. It's impacting a cause that's really making a difference. And that is their money is going to something. And they have something that they can put on. It's a talking piece. It's really sit on their coffee table and they scroll through things, they scroll through the pages, and they just really see the smiles, they see the affection, they see the colors, all these things, they play a part in our self-emotion, our self-awareness. That's that piece. And then there will be a gala dinner where sponsors and things will be involved. I won't do any silent auction or anything like that. But ultimately, all the proceeds, what I really want to do is build out a communal type foster home that's impacted by sports where several families can live in one communal building where they can all help each other. They can all support each other financially. They can all support each other, expose their children to other diversities. And I just feel like that type of approach to things will help build a more well-rounded future for the generation coming.
I love it. It's so cool that you're thinking about like, how can we pool resources in one place? So the home you mentioned, if we had multiple family units living in one space and people sharing the responsibility financially, that would allow so many more people to have so much more resources and time available to them. And I think we take for granted now, you know, in America, we've kind of created a culture where it's mine, 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 me, my family, my unit. And if everybody just took responsibility for somebody else, slight responsibility, or we teamed up, is not even really taking responsibility for another, but sharing responsibility is probably a better way to say it, how much better people would be off. You know, we talk about the idea that a lot of single parent homes are people that are struggling financially. And then you get two people in a household. Yes, there's more stability for the child or whoever may be in that household, but there's also two incomes generally. And two incomes, you get to split the rent and your dollars can go a lot further. So I love the idea of a community home where multiple families are there. And so not only do you take advantage of the financial aspect of it, but you also get to take advantage of having someone else to be able to look after your kids. So that's saving money on childcare and creating that like extended family feeling where we work as a community and we share and we care for one another, which makes everybody ultimately better. So I think it's a really cool idea.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's something I was just been looking into and some projects that some architects that have been doing some really innovative things. And that really kind of resonated with me with this project. And I was like, wow, I think that that's the perfect way to go. I think our kids nowadays, they need exposure. And that's one of our biggest problems right now is that we're living in such a secluded era where everybody is safe in their homes. But then when we go out to be out in the world, the real world, they don't have the tools to deal with the problems that are happening.
Yeah, that's a really tough thing to not have the resources, not have the tools, not have the life skills. That's why it's important for us to be able to give. So can you just talk to us a little bit about the idea of how giving can contribute to someone's success? Because I think we take for granted sometimes that giving actually helps people. And what does it look like to help people by giving and that contributing to their success?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, when you go into that giving aspect is go into it with a pure heart, right? Don't go into it with expecting some type of return on your giving because that's not giving. That's an investment.
Right, exactly.
If you're going in to help somebody, to plant a seed, to sow a seed into somebody else's life, to see them benefit, that seed will automatically come back around to you later in life. It may not be in the shape form of what you think it will be, but I guarantee just by doing that for them, their word of mouth will be enough. And that word of mouth will travel. So I really think that's first and foremost important. And not all giving has to be financial. You give what you have, whether it be finances or whether it be a simple ear to listen or a shoulder to cry on or just your presence or just helping with something else that somebody else can't capably do, whether it be a physical chore, just putting in time at a homeless shelter to help other people feed. These are all giving aspects. Everybody thinks of sowing or tithing and things like that, of having to shell out money. And that whole money exchange aspect, it turns into an exchanging relationship. And that relationship is very like superficial.
Yeah.
It's tough to come by. It's really tough to come by that genuine giving. And you know when people are giving from the heart, and you know when people are giving them like, well, you're going to owe me this later.
Yeah. You bring up some really, really good points. And I love you said that there's a difference between giving and investing. And I think that's a really important key factor for us to kind of delineate between, because sometimes you just merge the two together. You're not really thinking about it. And if you don't have a clear money mindset, you mesh those things and don't know that there is definitely a difference. And I need to treat them differently. And I need to feel differently when I do one versus the other. You give without the expectation of receiving, whereas you're investing, like you said, expecting a return on that investment. Your attitude is so important when you decide to give. The other thing I love that you said is that, it comes in all different shapes and sizes. So yes, this is a financial podcast and we start to think finances. And I think in general, when someone says, give me, your mind is already finishing the sentence with, oh my goodness, how much do they want to borrow? Or what do they need? How much is it going to cost me? But it's really more so about giving your time, your talents, and your treasures is a popular saying that I hear. And, your time can be donated, something you don't necessarily have any skills with. I always tell my friends when they're asking me to help out with something, I'm like, I'm not very good with decorative or creative things, but I can follow directions. So I'm willing to give you my time and I will do what you tell me to do so that it's a meaningful use of my time, but I don't have a particular skill in this area. However, sometimes I give my treasure, and my treasure is my skills. So what skills do you have that someone else does not have? And how can you help them? So in my regard, that's finances. I do a lot of pro bono work to make sure that people that are in less fortunate situations are able to better organize their finances. Or you're sitting around with your friends on the weekend, I'm happy to share my information with them. It is intellectual property that I've invested a lot in, and I've run a business where I expect people to value what I have inside and to pay for that. But at the end of the day, giving that skill that I have and being able to help people is something that is wonderful and that I'm passionate about being able to do. And then that third aspect of giving is your treasure, and that is the monetary giving. But you want to make sure, one, that you have organized finances so that you can do that. And you don't want to feel weird. And, if you don't feel good about it, then you should not give it. You should want to give freely. Okay, this is money I don't need. This is money for a good cause. This is money that I believe is going to make an impact in the world. And you freely pass that money along. So I thought you brought up some really good points there.
Yeah. I agree with all those points that you just said, everything across the board. I think it's just so important to have. I think it's important to have a portfolio, a diverse portfolio of, your finances, but then also your charity causes as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be very intentional about your giving is important as well.
Yes.
All right, so we're coming to what I like to call the final sprint. I'm going to rapid fire some questions at you, and then if you win, you get to stand on the podium. So we got to start practicing our podium stance well in advance of the game so we know what to do.
Right. On my shoulders.
All right. First thing is, what is your worst money habit?
That's got to be like just going out to eat constantly. Like I'll have food in the refrigerator, but I'm just like, I don't want to cook or I don't want to eat that. And I want to eat something else. So I'm like, I'm going out to eat or I'm going to order something. And before I know, by the end of the week, that stuff stacks up.
Yes. And I bet a lot of people are saying amen to that. I was definitely a culprit of that yesterday. I have all the healthy things in the refrigerator. I've been following my diet. And I was just like, I just want a burger. Please. I just need a burger right now. So yes, I have been there and done that. Okay. Tell us about your best money habit.
Actually, I know that I've put into place, and what I've been very, very conscious of is being conscious of my overhead and not spending more than what I bring in. That's been a really key point for me to hone in on and to be aware of, and to know what's the give and take and how much is going out, how much is coming in on a monthly.
I love it. I love it. I think some people take for granted. It sounds like a relatively simple concept, but most of America is in some sort of debt, and it's because you're spending more than you make. So to simply master that in and of itself is a key habit. All right, you got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Half of it's definitely going to go to some type of dessert. I'll tell you right off the bat. It's going to go to ice cream, or it's going to go to cake or something like that. That's definitely going down. The other half, I'm usually pretty good about. I usually keep at least $5 to $10 in my wallet to really just give away to somebody that I know that needs it, or somebody that I know that is hungry, because I have food. I have food that comes in. So I really just try to keep that giving piece. And whenever I have something on hand, I always make sure I have that extra cash to just sow away into somebody else.
I love it. That is great to be able to give all the time. Yeah, just to be thinking about it and being intentional about it all the time. What is the most meaningful gift that you received? Who was it from? And why was it meaningful?
My most meaningful gift is actually this right here. This was a gift given to me by, her name is Wendy Michelle. This was given to me on January 15th, which is actually my adoption day. And Wendy's very near and dear to my heart, and she knows my story probably better than anyone. She knows some of the ins and outs that nobody else knows. And she gave this to me because she said that when she saw this, that she thought of me and she thought of my parents, and she just thought of that bond and that appreciation aspect and kind of like that whole acceptance and that whole turning point and transition of my life. So I always keep that around me right now. And that's always a reminder. So it's the little things for me. I don't need big, lavish things.
Yeah. So often this question is something that is very low cost or even free. That is the most meaningful gift to people. And I love to ask this question because I think it drives home the point that money is not the thing that's going to buy happiness or lead to success. And it's not the most meaningful thing. It doesn't buy happiness. And so for the listeners, what Steven was showing me was like a statue of a parent. So there's a mother and a father on one side and the kid is in the middle jumping into the father's arms. It's a really, really cool thing that, someone gave to him. All right. Now, last but not least, final question. Can you share with us one thing that you would like to improve about your finances in the upcoming year?
Yeah, I would really like to get my compounding effect down. Really just hone in on that aspect. And I'm just really trying to make sure I'm making the right investments. And I think the tough part of that for me is that you get these opportunities that come in, and then it's always kind of like, all right, so how do I reinvest this into something else or reinvest it into one of the other brands? But I think my biggest piece right now is making sure that I'm investing long term.
So what's the action item that's going to help you actually implement that?
So I have a financial advisor, I've worked with him for a while, but I've been looking into some of those really, which would be great. I can get your insight on some of those kind of apps like Acorns and Robinhood and things like that to just really just automatically shift money. So it's kind of like out of mind, out of sight.
Yeah.
And it just goes right in. So I've been leaning towards that, but trying and looking at the ins and outs of it and what are the pros and cons of how much the investment is and how much you get on the return and what's the compounding effect and all those things. So I think that's the piece that I'm really trying to implement right now.
Gotcha. Okay. That sounds awesome. I wish you the best with that. We'll follow up and make sure that you're following through. So you have finished the final sprint. You've made it to the podium. I'm going to award you the gold medal of the Worth Listening podcast. And at this point, I'd love for you to be able to tell everybody where we can find you, how we can support you, how they can slide in your DMs if they need to say hey, did you ever do that Acorns thing that you said you're going to do? So tell us what we can do to help you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, you guys can find me on my website. Everything's on there, links and everything. My two biggest social media platforms So my website is www.stevieb.com. That's STEVIEYB.com. And then it's the same thing for my Instagram, but there is an underscore after the Y and in between the Y and the B. So those are the two more prolific areas that you can find me. You can find all my stuff on my website. Speaking engagements, if you want me to speak at an event, fostering success aspects on there. Everything's on there, so gives you a little more insight. And I'm very responsive. If you guys have any questions, just reach out.
Awesome. And of course, we'll add that to our show notes as well. Stevie, it was so good having you on the show today. Thank you for coming on.
I appreciate you, Lauren. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Stevie's Money Memoir. He has overcome some incredible obstacles in life and has managed to come out of them even stronger and looking for ways to make a positive impact on others. Stevie brought up some important points about understanding the difference between investing and giving. I really love that part of the show. If you're only giving because of what you think you can get back in return, you're not really doing it with the right mindset. We should be giving because of what it can do for others and not what we think it will do for us. He also mentioned an important point that giving doesn't have to be money. If your budget is tight and you don't have any extra dollars to give, don't feel bad about it. Instead, look for something you can do to help. You can donate your time or a skill that you have. There's always something you can be doing to help support causes that are important to you. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode worth listening to. If you have financial questions, suggestions for guests, or would like to share your own money memoir, please contact us through our website, worth-listening.com.